What's your creepiest glitch in the Matrix or unexplainable thing that's ever happened to you? Taking the trash out at night. Super remote area, so I know for a fact we're the only ones around here. Getting close to the road and I hear very clearly "help me" from a female voice. Even knowing there's such a slim chance of there being another living person around, I still feel like I should look around and check it out in case I wasn't just hearing things and someone actually needs help. Take about 2 steps in the direction I thought I heard it. I heard a giggle in the same exact voice. Turn around and walk promptly back up the driveway because fuck that shit. Anyone who actually needed help wouldn't be laughing. I don't think so. Similar experience. Walking home in a residential neighborhood at night. I was 14 at the time and this car is driving behind me very slowly. Too slowly. It pulls over about 5 feet ahead of me and stops. Alarm bells were already ringing at that time and I book it home. Just pure adrenaline. I burst through the front door, hyperventilating. Managed to get out. What happened to my dad, who takes off sprinting down the street. Sure enough, dad finds the car and is like, "What's going on, man?" The guy laughs and says his car died. He must have really scared me for me to run like that. Hardy ha. Good laugh at my expense. Dad says, "I'll be right back. I'll jump you." Dad goes back literally under 2 minutes. This was maybe 1.5 football fields away from my house, but not a straight shot, and guy isn't there. Well, guess who's laughing now? No one, because it was terrifying. I was working on my motorcycle in a dirt lot where I had crashed it trying to do a sick drift, breaking off the clutch lever and the gear shifter. I had brought a wrench set with me, and I was using one of them to take off a bolt when I put it down on the ground to finish unscrewing the bolt with my hand. 2 minutes later I went to pick it back up, and it was gone. I ran all around this dirt lot looking for it to no avail. Luckily I had a spare in the car. Fixed the bike and drove back to my apartment to shower as I was filthy. I walked in my room, and sitting on my desk was the wrench. I was dumbfounded. I once clocked out of work at 6 p.m., like I always did at the time, and began my hour-long train ride home. After I had found a seat, I went to sleep and woke up just before my station. From the station, it is a short bus journey, 10 to 15 minutes, to reach home. During the entire journey, I didn't use my phone and I don't wear a watch, so I didn't really notice the time anywhere. When I reached home, my family surprised me with, "You're home early, everything alright?" I look at the wall clock, and it is about to be 6 p.m. I was too shocked to understand what happened. Checked other watches, cell phones etc, and the time is absolutely right. A few days later, the admin emailed us the timesheets for the month, times clocking in and out, and every single days for me was around the same 6 p.m. So it certainly wasn't me having left work earlier. To this date, I haven't figured out how I gained between 60 to 90 minutes that day. Edit 1. Wow. Thank you for the pirate silver, mateys. This is most popular comment ever gained in hour or so, and some karma to go with it. Edit 2. The most common theory in comments seems to be the daylight savings, and I have considered it before. The problem is that it should work for both time in and time out, and if I remember, the time in was the same as always, and I didn't leave my home early for work. If I remember right, it also wasn't a Monday, which is when the clock reset effects come through at work despite the changes going in on Sunday. The only reasonable explanation I can assume would be either daylight savings or someone just messed with the clock, assuming you left based on an analog clock at your work. I've told this story before and could go into a ton of detail, but here's the short version. I'm 100% sure I vividly remember a dog that apparently doesn't exist. When I was 16, we lived on the other side of the province and my uncle had this little Jack Russell named Crew. Crew went missing for several months and then turned up at a humane society over an hour away, and we were all shocked this little dog has made it so far. Anyway, that was almost 20 years ago, and the other day I was talking to my parents and was like, whenever I hear about Jack Russells I think about Crew and that stunt he pulled, and they had no idea what I was talking about. Insisted my uncle had never had such a dog, I must have dreamed it, etc. Honestly, anyone else who would have remembered this dog has been dead for a long time, and I don't even have any pictures of my uncle. I have absolutely no way to prove this dog existed, but I'm sure that he did. I remember a trip my family took that never happened. I wrote about it in elementary school and my mom was so confused and told me I must have dreamed it. I'm 29 and still vividly remember walking through the field to this cool little house with my family. So confusing. I had just pulled into the parking lot of where I worked and was walking towards the building. It was like 3 in the afternoon, broad daylight. All of a sudden, I heard an ambulance's siren start sounding. Naturally, I looked down the road to try and see the ambulance. I see it approaching and decided to watch it for a bit. It was quickly getting closer and it was about to pass right by me. However, there was a large SUV waiting to turn out of the parking lot and onto the road, blocking a few meters of the road from my view. The ambulance passed behind the SUV, probably about 50 feet away from me at most, and I vividly remember the siren becoming completely silent in that instant. The ambulance had vanished entirely as it passed behind that SUV. I was so confused. The road did not have many cars on it at the time, and it was broad daylight. I did a triple take and made sure that I didn't just miss it. I had a clear view of the road going both directions, and there was no more ambulance to be seen. No more siren either. I walked up and down the road, trying to find it for a solid minute. But nope, it was gone. I was well rested, not on drugs, and I didn't have a history of hallucinations. It seems dismissible, but I was completely aware of what happened, and I can't explain it to this day. I have a very similar story. Broad daylight. Sitting at a stoplight to turn left under a highway bridge. In front of me and to the left is the turnaround lane for traffic coming from the other direction. I hear a police siren coming my way. I see a motorcycle cop with his lights flashing and siren on following a white SUV. The white SUV turns left in the turnaround lane, with the policeman following about 20 feet behind. This is where it gets weird. Both the SUV and motorcycle cop are going roughly 25 miles per hour. As the cop enters the turnaround lane, his siren suddenly shuts completely off the moment he passes behind a small concrete pillar. He never comes out from the other side of the pillar. The SUV just continues on as if nothing happened and heads for a Chicken Express just up the street. I'm sitting there in disbelief, wondering how and why the cop came to a complete stop from going 25 miles per hour, and his siren turned off at the same time, and the pillar would have only barely been able to cover him front to back. When the light turned green, I went and looked behind the pillar, expecting to see him somehow, but he wasn't there. My motorcycle cop got swallowed before my eyes into another dimension, and I think the white SUV did it somehow. It's just as well you didn't go and ask the people in the white SUV. That's how you disappear behind a pillar while traveling at 25 miles per hour. I shared this a few years ago when this question was asked last time, and didn't really realize how glitchy in the matrix it was until people started commenting, haha. In college, I took a hard news/soft news journalism class where one of the assignments was to write an obituary for one of my grandparents. The professor told us to write it on a deceased grandparent, but if all of your grandparents were still alive, we had to choose one. In my case, all of my grandparents were alive. I procrastinated actually doing the assignment until the night before it was due. because it seemed like a morbid assignment, especially once all of my grandparents were still alive. Scramming for an easy grandparent to write about, I gave my mom a call and asked her for some basic biographical information about my maternal grandfather. As we were talking about my grandpa's career, my mom couldn't recall the name of one of the companies he worked at. She lectured me about waiting until the last minute to write the assignment, because it was late, 10:30 p.m. my grandpa's time. However, she said she would give him a call to see if he was still awake and be able to answer that question once my assignment was due the following morning. When my mom called my grandpa, my grandma answered the phone in a panic. My grandma frantically explained that the paramedics had just arrived and were performing CPR on my grandpa because he had stopped breathing and lost consciousness. My mom was able to stay on the phone with my grandma until they took my grandpa to the hospital, where he was declared dead. In the time my mom and I had been talking on the phone about my grandpa's obituary, he was dying. His death was entirely unexpected at that. Although he was in his 80s, he was the healthiest of my grandparents at the time. We ended up using the obituary I wrote for that writing assignment as his actual obituary. Still freaks me out when I think about the timing. I always have weird visions, or I'll see something in a dream, but I won't notice that I've seen it. Then like a week or so after, I'll see the exact same thing, almost like déjà vu, but not quite, since it hasn't actually happened before. It would always be something so specific, and it has happened multiple times, so it can't just be a strange coincidence. Edit. It's very reassuring to see all the stories of people experiencing the same thing. Assures me that I'm not going insane, or maybe many others are just going insane with me. I won't be able to read them all as my phone's been blown up with them, but I'll try my best. Wait, this happens to me too. I'll have a dream where something is happening in the background, or I'm doing something and I don't register it. And then a few weeks later I'll see it in real life. I'll then realize that I saw it in a dream. When I was a teenager, my family lived in a big 115-year-old brick house. Plenty of creepy stuff happened, but one night I was heading to bed when the door between the first floor kitchen and the basement stairs absolutely slammed shut. It had a unique sound that I recognized immediately as the kitchen/basement door. There were no windows open. That cold caused a draft. Our dog was asleep on the second floor. I was on the second floor. My parents were both asleep in the third floor attic, had been converted to a master bedroom. None of us could have shut the door. Fucking terrified, I worked up the courage to go investigate, carrying my hilariously teeny pocket knife for protection. As I went downstairs I turned on every light. When I reached the kitchen, the door was wide open. Even more freaked out I ran back up to bed, leaving the lights on. A minute or two later, I heard a definite SSSSHHHHOK from downstairs. I laid in bed and was ready to accept my demise. Eventually I somehow fell asleep, and in the morning I was there first downstairs. I woke up before my parents and dog, and found that the lights were all off, and the basement door had been shut again. This happened around 1991. It's the middle of the night. I'm standing in my sister's living room, and it must be a full moon, because even though it's around 1 AM and the lights are off, I can see clearly. There's a mixing bowl with popcorn kernels in the bottom on the floor in front of the TV and some rental VHS in a pile nearby. I hear a noise and turn around to see my sister's normally very friendly Labrador retriever looking like Cujo. Fangs bared, snarling, hackles raised. Suddenly there's a bright flash of light, and I wake up like I hit the bed from a great height. I think that was a weird dream. Eventually, I fall back to sleep, and in the morning I call my sister, planning to tell her the story, but she preempts me by telling me about the weird thing that happened in the night. They woke up to the sound of the dog snarling at about 1 AM. Her husband thought there was a prowler in the house, got a gun, and went to find the dog. She was standing in the living room snarling at the middle of the room. He couldn't see anyone, so he flipped on the light. No one was there. The dog instantly stopped snarling and walked to her bed like nothing had happened. He checked the property and went back to bed. We talked a bit, and I found out they watched some rental movies, and of course we had popcorn. Why? My sister is a little woo-woo at times, so I decided not to tell her about my night. She lived about 450 miles away, by the way. I was on vacation on Florida visiting a friend. We were walking on the beach on a perfectly sunny day when everything went black for a second. I think it was weird, but explained it away thinking that my eyes were playing tricks on me until he looked at me and said, "Did everything go black for a second?" The gods were quick saving the simulation. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You're beautiful people. Until the next video.